Hello there friends, CSGO Live here. In today's video, the price of matchfixing, the secret to Beat Donk, workshop charms, and the results of EPL group stage. Plus plenty of other exciting news from the world of CS2. So without further ado, let's get straight to it. And I think we shall start with something a bit unusual. We're all used to pro players grinding Faceit in their free time, but Shox took a different approach. For some reason, he decided to grind ranked matches in CS itself. And he's actually doing pretty well, currently sitting at the 18th place of the leaderboard. He got there with 67 wins and 73% win rate. While most pros stick to Faceit, the real grinders are out there sweating in MMs. Honestly, makes me wonder, how often does Shox run into cheaters? God help him. Bodyy reveals his French dream team. Another French player made the news. Bodyy decided to put together his all-French dream team. Here's how it looks like. Coach, X-Stars, Riflers, NBK, Lucky and Gravity, IGL Apex, and Zyvu as the Opper. Honestly, pretty solid and logical picks. Zyvu is a seasoned and insanely talented Opper with a super flexible playstyle, while Apex is even more experienced and they both have chemistry. He's a classic veteran who's been around since CS's golden days. NBK brings a similar level of experience and he still can shoot. Meanwhile, Gravity and Lucky are Body's teammates from 3D Max, so there's already built-in synergy. The only concern, let's just hope that they don't trash talk each other the way they do in matches. Also, how would this team function with 3 IGLs at the same time? I have no idea, but, well, drop your thoughts in the comments below. Speaking of the best, Kasat couldn't help but bring up the old Cloud9 roster, not the one with Shiro and Nefani, but the lineup with Alex, Mezzi, Woxic, Floppy, and Aztac. This was quite the squad that was supposed to be molded into champions, but things didn't go as planned, as you know. According to Kasat, this squad was thinking about kicking Woxic on day 5. Fast forward to today, only Woxic and Mezzi are still competing at tier 1. The rest are pretty much forgotten. Aztac last played for Ninjas in Pyjamas at the Copenhagen Aromars, but hasn't been active since. Floppy was part of Complexity for a while, but is currently without a team. And Alex hasn't played professionally in 3 years. Ironically, the player who was considered the biggest problem, Woxic, is now thriving with Turkey's best team, while Mezzi has become a pistol king in one of the world's strongest squads. Now, speaking of the best, we can't ignore Donk, because he is an absolute monster tearing up the scene and currently the EPL. But recently, the secret to beat him was finally revealed by none other than Sponge. So, the analyst said that the easiest way to stop Donk is to basically find him a girlfriend. That way he might actually stop grinding Faceit 24/7, which will give other players a chance to catch up in the race for the best player of the year, or at least for an MVP title. Guys, as for you, if you want to stay ahead of the game, just follow us on Twitter. That's where we drop the freshest and most interesting CS news. The link is in the description. And, you know, there is one team that definitely isn't in the race for the best right now, and that's NaVi, because their discipline seems to have completely disappeared. First, they decided to travel to this tournament without their mental coach, who is also their nutritionist. And she was furious when she found out that JL ate a piece of cake before their match against Pain. Well, after that, both players and staff decided to start trolling her. At one point, the analyst dropped the message in the team chat saying that their burgers were ready, and JL even chimed in, asking for extra fries. Whether NaVi are actually eating junk food is unclear, but what's obvious is that their discipline is slipping, as well as their game. The strict regimen that they once bragged about is starting to crack, and maybe that's exactly why the results are going downhill. Or maybe it's something else. You never know with the mastermind of Blade. Still, NaVi will have another chance to prove themselves outside the EPL. They just received a direct invite to PGL Astana, which will happen in Kazakhstan. Joining them are Team Spirit, G2, Mongols, BIG, Gamer Legion, Eternal Fire, MIBR, Furia, Astralis, Pain, and Virtus.Pro, which basically means that this is the first huge international tournament in the Eastern European region since forever. And for at least 4 of the teams, this one might be called the home turf. However, this tournament might cause some scheduling conflicts, as some teams could struggle to make it to IM Dallas in time. But that said, most teams will likely prioritize Astana. And since we're talking about tournaments, we have to mention rigged, match-fixed events, because some shocking numbers has just been leaked. So listen to this: if you can organize a tournament that gets listed on Wikipedia and lasts 15 days, features 2 best-of-3s per day, and has all results match-fixed, you could be making around $500,000 per year, assuming you run 24 such events while ticking all the right boxes. But guys, let's be clear, running these kinds of tournaments is straight up wrong. If you get caught, ESIC and Valve will fine you, and your career in esports will be dead. Screw match fixers and screw cheaters. That's it. And one last thing before we jump into the matches, let's wrap up with some good news. It looks like we might actually be getting charms in CS2 soon. I mean, charms cases. New lines of code suggest that special models have been added to the workshop, and they look a lot like charms. At least that's what Gabe Follower reported. And if he's saying it, chances are it's only a matter of time before they drop. The real question is if people would really use the charms. Because, for example, me personally, I have only 2 charms on all of my weapons, MAC-10 and the AK. And it's just that I don't want them. Guys, you can share your thoughts about charms in the comments below. And now let's wrap up the EPL group stage. On the second to last day, teams were fighting to either stay in the tournament or end up in a risky 2-2 situation. The highlight match was NaVi versus G2. Neither team had been impressive at EPL, but with all the pressure on NaVi, they seemed like the weaker side, at least on paper. However, it's worth noting that NaVi have dominated G2 in recent matchups. First map, Mirage, it's NaVi's strongest map. NaVi came in guns blazing, taking 7 rounds in a row. For a while it felt like G2 weren't on the server. The half ended 10-2 in NaVi's favor. They were playing on T side. But then, after switching sides, G2 looked a bit more comfortable. They won both the pistol round and the force buy. But just when they started to find their footing, Alexi B clutched a 1v2. NaVi then won another round, and suddenly they were on the match point. G2 tried to claw back, but it was too little too late. NaVi closed out the first map with ease. Next, Ancient, G2's pick, and the Samurai kicked off with a strong start. They took the first 3 rounds on T side, but the moment NaVi got rifles, they flipped the script, winning 7 in a row and closing the half 7-5. Then on CT side, G2 completely collapsed. Even though NaVi weren't in their peak form, they rolled over the Samurai and secured the playoff spot. Meanwhile, G2 were left in a do-or-die 2-2 situation. Luckily, the Samurai had a second chance to qualify for the playoffs the next day, this time against Gamer Legion. And despite not having the biggest names, Gamer Legion have repeatedly proven that they can compete with Tier 1 teams. First map, Inferno, GL's pick. Gamer Legion started strong, they won the first 3 rounds, but they struggled once the gun rounds kicked in. Thankfully for them, G2 made a huge mistake, losing a 1v3 clutch to Towson on B, which allowed GL to take the first half, 7-5. And speaking of Towson, he was an absolute nightmare for G2 on B side, constantly shutting them down. But, well, G2 had Monacy. It seemed like Ilya just realized that if he didn't carry carry the team, nobody would. So he single-handedly kept G2 in the game, delivering one clutch after another. So thanks to his performance and Hunter a little bit, G2 didn't fall apart completely and managed to close out Inferno 13-1. Next was Nuke, G2's pick. This time things looked a bit better for G2, at least on paper. They started surprisingly strong on T-side, never letting GL to build the momentum. By halftime they were up 7-5, with m0NESY once again carrying hard. Meanwhile, Malps was causing some issues, but it was all good. After switching sides, G2 doubled their lead, completely shutting down GL. They tried to fight back, but nothing worked, and G2 sealed the series 2-0, which secured them the spot in the playoffs. Now, let's talk about my favorite team, Falcons. So, they found themselves in an interesting situation at the EPL. First, they faced Furia, and they looked raw. They had to go to overtimes on both maps. At that point, it felt like Falcons were not capable of closing out games. It's clear that this roster is still rough around the edges. The players don't seem to fully understand each other yet. Honestly, they could probably use a 1 or 2 month break from tournaments just to focus on team synergy and structure, because right now they're just a super expensive lineup playing worse than a well-coordinated tier 2 mix. Moreover, I honestly think that when Niko starts to decline, Falcons are just a tier 1.5 stack. No offense, guys. It feels like they're just too dependent on one player, and sometimes it really feels like they have no chemistry. And you know, next, against Eternal Fire in a battle for relegation or getting to the playoffs, it was basically the same story. The Turkish team won their own pick without much trouble. Then Falcons barely squeezed into the overtimes and won their own map. But, well, on the decider, Centaurus happened. It's almost funny considering that at the start of the year Falcons were trolling Eternal Fire, and now they're getting eliminated by them at every tournament. They need to figure things out fast, or they'll end up like previous roster, wasted potential. Alongside these teams, Mouse and Liquid also managed to squeeze into the playoffs, but not without a struggle. Mouse are still trying to find their footing after changing their in-game leader, while Liquid seemed stuck in an endless slump. They look decent at times, but something is always missing. A bit more from the Opera, a bit more from the IGL, NaV and Nerds seem a little lost, and overall the team is full of issues that they just don't seem to address. It's like the players are more focused on their own struggles than actually fixing the team. Although I should say Twists in the latest match played amazingly. Anyways, here's your first round playoff matchups. Vitality versus Liquid. Here, no real need for analysis. Vitality are on another level. They should easily close it 2-0. NaVi versus the Mongols. Now, this one is interesting. NaVi are struggling, but they are kinda okay, but also kinda shaky. Meanwhile, Mongols have been grinding hard, and honestly, they deserve a win at this point. No clear favorite, to be honest, but I feel that the Mongols can do it. Mouse versus G2 are pretty even. This one, I guess, depends entirely on m0NESY. If he goes nuclear, Mouse will just not stand a chance, but if he struggles, they should take it. And the last is Eternal Fire versus Team Spirit, and here the Dragons are obvious favorites. Donk is just insane, as well as Shiro, and I really doubt that Eternal Fire can show something against them. Guys, what do you think? What will be the outcomes of the matches? Don't forget to tell us in the comments below, and also to hit the follow button and like the video. And if you don't want to miss out the latest CS2 news, make sure to hit the notification bell. I'm not saying goodbye for a long time. See you soon.